Prior to making a presentation, many of you, like me, may start to sweat, have their mouth go dry, their stomach start gurgling, or you get the onset of a tension headache. Today, what we want to do is explore how can we get rid of all those jitters. Welcome to the Joy Powered Workspace podcast, where we help people leaders embrace joy in the workplace. I'm Susan White, owner of Susan Tinder White Consulting, and with me is my good friend, JoDee Curtis, who's owner of Purple Inc., which is a large-scale HR consulting practice that I'm an executive collaborator in. What is the one thing that can make even the most confident professional suddenly forget their own name? Getting in front of a large audience with every eye in the room on you, waiting for you to entertain, educate, or impact them. Some professionals absolutely thrive in that kind of an environment, like my dear friend JoDee here, who truly comes alive in front of a group. Now, let's put me next to that. And I will tell you that prior to making a presentation, many of you, like me, may start to sweat, have their mouth go dry, their stomach start gurgling, or you get the onset of a tension headache. Today, what we want to do is explore how can we get rid of all those jitters? How do we perfect our presentation skills? For all of us who want to get better at public speaking or even privately speaking up in front of a group within your own organization. Presentation skills are not just nice to have. ZipDo Education Report 2026 says that 81% of hiring managers say presentation skills are critical for promotion. JoDee, does that surprise you?
It surprises me. I think the statistic is important and that I think they're critical also. But honestly, I'm surprised that 81% of hiring managers recognize the importance of that. Because most hiring managers, I don't think, are typically so comfortable with those either. So
Maybe they want to hire somebody who could do the public speaking for them. Who knows?
there you go.
Right? Oh my gosh. I'd much rather be in the audience for sure. So why does it really matter? Why getting our presentation skills better than they are today really matter? Well, according to ZipDo, the average audience attention span is 10 to 15 minutes. And that's actually from a Wi-Fi talents report in 2026, which means that usually halfway through a 30-minute presentation, people are mentally planning what they're going to have for dinner that night, right? Only 30% of people say that they ever feel prepared to do a good presentation. And according to World Metrics Report 2026, 55% of presenters admit that they read directly from their slides.
Ouch. I do believe that one too, though, because I think so many people stand up and read slides.
Yeah, they spend a lot of time getting those slides ready. They love their slides, but please don't read your slides to the room. Yeah, we can
Yes.
lose people really, really fast.
Yes.
So what actually makes a good presentation? Having good content to share absolutely is important, but it may not be as important as you think. And this statistic always surprises me, but I try to remind myself of it. Only 7% of impact is usually attributed to the content, while your voice and body language carry much more weight. Wi-Fi Talent reports that 55% of success in a presentation is driven by the nonverbal communication. Isn't
Yeah.
that just wild?
Yeah. And yet I think there's been some statistic around for a while that says like we spend 90% of our time focusing on the content, right? Not the other.
The delivery of it. Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So, so true and a good reminder for all of us. So,
Mhm.
JoDee, let's share the 6 points that we think are important for you to consider as you prepare for that next time you're going to be up in front of the room or up in front of a large group.
Yeah, number one is to start strong. If you don't start out strong, you may never get their attention at all. So those first impressions matter. People judge quickly and they stick with it. So if you walk out on the stage or in front of the room and you're shaking and look nervous, you may lose them before you even open your mouth. So, a strong opening is really critical. So, start out with a story, a bold statement, or a surprising statistic.
I love that. And unfortunately, that's when my mouth is dry at the very beginning. It's before I feel very comfortable. Good reminder, though. Maybe if I have a good story, something that has some good data in it, something that's surprising, maybe that will help launch not only their interest in me, but also my confidence. So I
Right.
think telling stories is really valuable. And you, I know, feel really strongly about that, about making sure you capture people through stories.
Right. I do. I do. It's critical. People want to hear the stories behind it. They don't want data and research. They want to hear that too, I think, but
Mhm.
it's the stories they remember. So,
That makes sense.
yeah.
The third point is to use visuals, now, but don't abuse your PowerPoints. You want to make sure that you do think about what do I have up on the screen? Is it something that is going to entice people's interest? They say people retain 65% of information when you use visuals as opposed to just 10% of recollection when you only talk to people, when you use words only. So,
Yeah.
visual aids improve understanding up to 43%, according to Wi Fi talents again.
Yeah. Nice. Number 4 is to make it interactive. Wi Fi talents report that 63% of audience members are more engaged with interactive presentations, like leveraging the Q&A or using polling questions and getting individuals talking with you. And our technology today allows for so much more of that, for people to be able to vote or answer a polling question. So use them.
That really makes sense. I think my fear factor that enters is when I think I'm going to try to get people to talk is that I'll have crickets.
Yes.
Anyone? Anyone? And then people start to feel sorry for me. I'll get some pity hands raised. So, see, that's just that negative voice in your head. You got to let that go. And then your thought, use technology. You could have people voting from their phones on something and have
Right.
live reactions. So, I love that point. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Um, Number five tip is, practice. Yes, actually practice for your presentation. Practicing at least 3 times, statistics show, makes you much more likely to succeed. Yet, over half of presenters don't rehearse enough. Winging it is not a strategy, it's really a gamble. Nobody will ever accuse me of not practicing enough. I over practice. So it blows my mind to think that there's people out there that make a presentation that they don't practice for. I don't get it.
And some things to avoid or some common pitfalls when speaking or training, by the way, too, any kind of presentation. As we mentioned earlier, reading slides like it's bedtime storytelling, right? Or saying next slide like it's
Mm,
a personality trait, right? Bringing 87 slides
mm,
for a 20-minute presentation, and then ending your talk without sharing the clear takeaway, right? Forgetting
mm.
to emphasize what is your message about.
I love that. I have to admit, I'm guilty. Did a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and it was a webinar. So I did have a really large audience, but it was all over the screen. And I had an hour to do it, and I probably had 25 slides. I could
Yeah.
have used 6. I had
Ah,
and then I realized, like, halfway through, I've got, more than half of my slides left to do, and then, boy, I start going on high speed, which,
yeah,
yeah, it's nuts. So I love that. Think about what do you really need, and don't be
yeah,
so reliant on your slides. Yeah.
right, right.
So, Jody, we often interview experts on whatever topic we're talking about. Well, I consider you my expert on
Uh,
making presentations. I know that you are a certified professional speaker. I would love to ask you a few questions, if I may.
yes,
So,
yes,
what does it mean to be a certified professional speaker? How do you become one? What is that all about?
yes. So I'm a member of the National Speakers Association, which is a part of a global organization as well too, and they have a process of certifying speakers. It is grueling
Mm.
process, I can tell you. And there are less than 700 people in the world who have this certification.
Wow.
And I think that doesn't mean, they're not good speakers because
Mhm.
they don't have that, but it's committing to the process of doing it. And it's based on, of course, you have to send them a recorded presentation of you. So, part of it is, can you
Sure.
speak and tell good stories and all those types of things. There's a lot of rules about like ensuring that you have sources and you quote the source and
Mm.
things like that too. So some kind of compliance oriented pieces to it. But you also, before you even get to the video, you have to show that you've had so many presentations and that you've been paid for those presentations. So it's a process that looks back 7 to 10 years
Oh my
on the
gosh.
number of presentations and how much you got paid and where it was and who was the contact. And
Mm.
they actually reach out to those, a meeting
Sure.
planner that might have hired you or a conference um, someone and chairman of a conference or a client that paid you to present. It can
Mhm.
be training and speaking opportunities. That's relatively new. It used to just be speaking only
Okay.
and not training courses, but now it's a combination of the two. So if anyone is even thinking about maybe getting
Mhm.
this certification, start tracking all
Mm.
of your engagements because going back to gather
Oh,
all that
7 to 10 years.
information,
Mm.
it is voluminous amount of data. So,
Mhm. Wow. Well, thank you. Very, very interesting. So, Jody, what is the first thing that you focus on when you are preparing for a brand new presentation? How do you
yeah.
approach it?
Well, I think it's hard for me to say the first thing because I really want to say two things.
Mm.
Number one is understanding your audience, and number two is, of course, the content, right? But
Mm.
how do you determine the content if or you can't determine the content if unless you know your audience? And I'll tell you a little story of a huge mistake I made. I presented once at a construction industry conference in Las Vegas. And I told a story at the beginning of my presentation. I forget what it was about, honestly, but that alluded to my background in public accounting and as an accountant. And I did not realize until after I gave the presentation that everyone in the audience were finance people in the construction industry. And I thought I was like speaking to construction
Sure.
industry people, which I was, but not just the
Mm.
accountants. And my story was actually about accountants in the construction industry.
Oh my
I
gosh.
didn't make the connection that that's who they were specifically. Talk about
Oh,
being
embarrassing.
horrified
Mm.
afterwards. And I don't know, maybe they didn't catch it as much as what my intended audience I thought
Sure.
would appreciate the story. But anyway, know who you're talking to.
Great
And I mean,
advice.
I can speak about things like conflict, but am I speaking about it to HR professionals, to
Mm.
construction industry professionals, to accountants?
Mm.
How do I want to approach the content based on the audience?
Yeah, that's great advice. So, Jody, how do you? You've talked about how important it is to really know the audience. How do you adapt your message for different audiences? Do you
Mhm.
spend time talking to the event planner ahead of time? Like, how do you go deep? Because I know you speak all over the world.
Yeah, it is. critical. And honestly, a lot of times as was the case with the example I just gave, I don't always do this enough.
Mm,
But just understanding like what might the age of the audience be or and how might my stories align with that. I actually started speaking to a lot of college students
mm,
when was a recruiter. Actually, I was still an accountant at the time, but doing on-campus recruiting and speaking to a lot of accounting clubs, right? So,
mhm,
if I'm speaking to college students, I want to talk about early times of my career or
mhm,
choices I made about my career or my first year of work and things like that. Versus again, is it more seasoned leaders? Is it, do I want to connect my stories about leadership? And again, even if my topic might generally sort of be the same thing, I might be
mhm,
talking about one of my books or about joy powered workspaces. So the content itself might not be that much different. It's the stories
mhm.
that I tell is really where I spend my time adapting the message, as you ask. So,
I love that. For
yeah.
people like me who do get nervous before presenting, what's your go-to strategy for managing your presentation anxiety? For managing anybody's presentation anxiety?
I have to admit, as you mentioned earlier, I just don't have much of it. As we've talked over the years about our Clifton strengths, I have self assurance, and which sometimes is a problem. Like I have too much self assurance that I may be overconfident. But I just can't tell you that. I mean, I think being prepared
Mhm.
is my number one. And knowing my content and understanding
Yes.
my message and understanding, who I'm talking to. But in terms of true, a lot of people say squeeze your bum cheeks, right? Before you're supposed to say that, or doing a superpower stance, or, memorizing the first few lines or things like
Hmm.
that. I mean, I do, um, I just don't have a lot, and I know that's not helpful to so
Mhm.
many people who have that because there's lots of different ways you can do that. One thing I think I do at times, I'll get ready, to walk out on stage or to be introduced, and that what I mentioned earlier about having a strong beginning. Sometimes I'll think at the last minute, I'm gonna change my beginning.
Oh.
And then I
Mhm.
get a little bit nervous, but sometimes that happens because when they're introducing me, they'll tell a story or they'll highlight something in my bio that
Mm.
maybe I hadn't thought that much about, and then last second, I'll think, I'm gonna tell this story or I'm gonna start like
Mhm.
this. And then, of course, that gives me a little anxiety at the last second, but I do that to myself. So,
Sure, but that's great. You what you do is you optimize that opportunity, right? That somebody
yeah,
said something that you can leverage. I
yeah,
will tell you the things that I do. I really work on breathing because I know that I need to come out with long, deep breaths. Because if I keep my in the nervousness state, I'm going to talk higher. My voice is high enough as it is, and I will be gasping for air. So I work on doing some deep breathing before I go out or before I
yeah,
start. I do try to have breakfast. I try to have protein. So if it's going to be in the morning that I'm going to be starting an all day training or whatever, I'm going to make sure I have protein. I don't wait to see what's in the room because it's usually going to be carbs or fruit or sugar or something that's not going to be sustainable. If I have
right.
an afternoon, I'll make sure I eat lunch and I have protein. And I think that whenever that negative voice hits my head, like, oh my gosh, these people, they know so much more than you. I mean, all the things that your mind is telling you before you open your mouth could be so damaging. I'm like, stop. These people signed up for this because they want to walk away with something. They want me to be successful. They want their
Right.
time to be successful. So I
That's
just have
right.
to tamp down that negativity
Yeah.
voice and
Yeah.
try to bring, good, rational sound thinking. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
listeners, my guess is some of you have good ideas about how you tamp down your anxiety. Don't hesitate to send us a note. We'll be happy to share in a future episode.
Right.
So, JoDee, I've got to go back to that statistic that we heard today about that you tend to lose your audience at that 10, 15-minute window. Is there anything that you do during your presentation to try to keep people engaged? Because so often, I know when you're scheduled to speak, it's 45 minutes, it's an hour. Sometimes you do a 4-hour training or an all day training. What do
Hmm.
you do to try to pull people's minds back into the moment?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to go back for a second because you just highlighted it too. And I struggle with this because I feel that I'm mostly a trainer. I
Mm,
mean, I've done keynotes and I've done presentations to very large audiences, but I train on a very regular basis. So, how I prepare for training is a little bit different than how I prepare for speaking. And that generally in speaking, you are on, say, for an hour, right?
sure,
Now, that's not to say I can't have some audience participation or
sure.
polling or talk to your neighbor or get in a small group. But I do feel like, as a speaker, say, for example, at a conference,
Mhm,
um, that I have to think differently about that I'm on for the whole time. So I'm going to I mentioned that, but I'm going to jump back to training, for example. So when I'm training, I am very consistently thinking about every 10 minutes, 15 maximum.
mhm,
I want to have an audience participation, right? And
mhm.
that might be talk to your neighbor, get in a small group. And training, I do a lot more of like group activities, right? Or
Okay.
let's stand up and move around. Let's go talk to three people. Let's, you know, get make a list of 10 things that you would
Mhm,
do in this circumstance type of thing. So I definitely want very interactive activities.
mhm.
Speaking, even I sometimes will hear a speaker speak who says, "Get in a small group," and I'm kinda like, "Ugh, I don't wanna get in a small group.
I
I
don't
just
want to meet
wanna."
my neighbor.
Yes, like, I think we're very social people, but
Sure.
still, sometimes I'm like, "I came to hear you speak, not the person next to me," right?
Right.
So
Right.
even though I appreciate the engagement, sometimes I really just only want to hear them speak. So
Mhm,
I have to think more about every 10 minutes or so. And by the way, I personally would recommend less than the 15 minutes.
mhm.
That report said 10 to 15, but I think people's attention spans are shorter and shorter every day. I know mine is, right?
Sure.
So, maybe it's sharing some slides with some facts and
Mhm.
then telling a story.
Yeah.
And then, showing a video and
Mhm,
then telling a story, right? So I think the medium becomes more important. Although I do videos and different things and training as well. I think if I'm the only one up there speaking, I've got to adjust my pace,
mm.
I'm not going to do 10 slides in a row with
Just
facts and data or, here are
sure.
the top 10 things you need to do type of thing. So
Fair enough. Not really. Don't lecture. Don't use 10 slides to lecture. Yeah.
thank you. That's the
Yeah. That makes
word,
sense.
lecturing. Yeah.
So, can we talk a little bit about subtle body language or voice techniques that you think people should employ?
Mhm. I'm really big on body language techniques. It's funny, years ago, I used to do a lot of presentation skills training to accountants.
Mm,
That was my background. I was an accountant and I did a lot of work with CPA firms and really spent a lot of time emphasizing the importance of good body language and gestures, right? So
mhm.
making, I was with someone who was really tall, and I was also with someone who was really short. Or I have three things I want to share with you,
Mhm.
and holding up fingers with numbers. And so I think all of those things can really emphasize the points you're making. Now, on the flip side, you got to be careful that you're not constantly gesturing,
Yeah.
right? That you're using hand motions that aren't adding any value. Or I see people speak who have what in my training, we use the term dinosaur arms, right? So think about if your elbows are attached to your sides, but your hands are moving. So it
Yes.
looked like a dinosaur has very short arms, right?
Mhm.
I just wanna scream when I see people do that, and I know it's a habit, right?
Sure.
No, they don't realize they're doing it. I can
Mhm.
think of one speaker in particular on who I've seen speak 3 or 4 times to an audience of 15, 20,000 people
Oh my
who
gosh.
constantly uses dinosaur arms, and
Mm.
I cannot listen to one word they say
Oh, because 'cause you're
because I'm
fascinated with the arm movement, right? Or the
right, and it's so distracting to me. Now, I have learned that particular skill. Doesn't mean I don't do some of those things occasionally too, but the way I learned about gestures has sunk in with me so much that I will catch myself doing it, right?
Yeah.
I may do it for a bit too long, and then I'll say, like, "Stop, put your
Yeah.
arms down," right?
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
But
self-coaching.
gestures can really make a big impact in
Mhm. Yeah,
presenting. So,
I think that's fair. And my natural inclination is to be still. And so I have to tell myself, you need to move. You need to move your
mhm.
arms. You could make a point because I just, kind of like hibernation.
Yeah,
Get all the information out and then move on. Nope.
yeah,
I gotta
yeah,
let people breathe. And I think by moving around, it causes you to slow down a bit. So all
yeah.
good advice.
You also ask about voice techniques. I
Yes.
think
Yes.
just especially in storytelling, right, to make changes and, are you speaking softly to louder to wow, just using
Mm,
more expressions, right? And especially in a story, I
mm,
think. But even if I'm sharing facts, like if I said 50% of people who give a presentation, or I said 50% of
mhm.
people who give a presentation, right? You
Yes.
you can really
Emphasize with your voice. Yeah.
emphasize words and use a tone of voice that's different that helps people stay engaged as
Yeah.
well.
Good
So,
advice.
yeah.
So, if one of our listeners or more than one of our listeners have a big presentation tomorrow, Jody, what should they do tonight to get ready?
Well, they have to understand the content. Even though, we just shared earlier in the podcast about only 7% of people may remember the content. Um, it has to be there, right? I think it's important to add the gestures, to add the voice changes, but you can do all of that and not have any meat to your story. So I think it might not be their takeaways all the time, but you have to have a message. So,
Mhm.
understanding again, I'd say, who's your audience? What's the message I want to take from them? And then doing the things that they may need to work on. Like for you, maybe it's that what's my go-to strategy? What's my breathing? What's my stance?
Mhm,
Am I working on my gestures, right? So even
mhm,
you mentioned about practicing something 3 times. Practice you're not just the content, but
mm,
practice gestures and practice those voice changes. So when I get to this slide, I'm going to do a big gesture there.
mhm.
And specifically even write those in your notes to remind yourself of them. So
That's great. A question I just thought of is about having notes. I know it's really important when you give a presentation not to be too reliant on your notes. But do you recommend to somebody who's not a seasoned presenter have the notes up there with you just in case? Or
A
what's your philosophy?
100%. I
Okay.
think it's totally fine to have notes with you. Now, you don't wanna be staring at a script and reading it the whole time, but
Mhm,
even, something I'll do a lot is if I have different statistics or points I wanna make, I'll even just say, I wanna read this because I
ah,
want to make sure I get this statistic correct or this data point
mhm.
or this quote, right? So I won't even always try to memorize
Memorize.
it, but
Mm.
just to say, "This is important, and I'm going to read it." Now, I definitely don't like reading your slides.
Right, right.
Although, occasionally, if I have a quote, I might
Sure,
do that, but,
sure.
I'm not talking about reading slides, just to emphasize that, but it's okay to check your notes,
That's great. That's great.
yeah.
Thanks for that. What is the most joyful part of making presentations for you?
Yeah. Well, I love the connection with people, right? I
Mm,
love to look out into the audience and see people smiling or taking notes or nodding their heads, right? And getting that affirmation, I guess, of
huh,
the message or the way that I'm presenting it. So I just love when I can make an impact or send a message to people
huh.
about something I think is really important for them to know, right? And I want to do it in a way that is engaging and makes them feel good about it, or even I can do this, right? Or I
Mhm.
understand this, or I want to try this, whatever that might be. So,
Definitely joyful. Yeah, very
yeah,
good. Well, thank you very much.
thank you. Susan, here's our listener question. Do you have any tips on how to get the team more engaged during meetings?
Mm. We have done a couple of episodes in the past that may be of interest to the listener with the question, or any listener really. In 2018, we did an episode entitled Meeting Skills. And then in 2024, we did another one called How to Run Effective Meetings. And in there, we do have some tips about how do you get everybody who shows up at the meeting physically to hopefully be there mentally with you. So,
Mhm,
some quick tips that I have, and then Jody, I'd love any that you want to piggyback on or add. First of all, I would invite suggestions for the agenda in advance of a meeting. If you know you're going to meet next Tuesday on a topic, send out a note to everybody who's going to be there and say, hey, we're going to be meeting on XYZ next week. Is there anything you want to make sure we cover? Is there any questions you want to bring? Is there anything in this arena that we can add to the agenda? Second of all, uh, if you've got that agenda and maybe nobody else had any input, no problem, but trying to send it out at least a day ahead of time to say,
mhm,
okay, it's Monday. Tomorrow we're going to meet on this topic. Here's what I've got on there to cover. What it does is it helps people that may be introverted, that like to process things, that may come with some really good ideas, that opportunity to let their brain do their magic. So think about getting it out in advance. Worst case, if you want people engaged in a meeting, before you jump into an agenda, stop and say, here's what I want to cover today, so that they, at least at the beginning, kind of understand the roadmap. It will,
mhm.
I think, help people think, okay, they're going to get to this or they're not going to get to that. Maybe I need to say something at the get go. So I'm just a big believer in using your agenda as a tool for engagement. I like to, on my agenda, say how much time we're allocating for each item we're going to get through. And the fact is, sometimes you're going to be on item three of eight, and you're halfway through the meeting. You have the opportunity there to call an audible and say, obviously, we have a lot of energy around this topic. I know we want to cover X, Y, and Z the rest of today. Well, let's talk about it. Do we want to just really focus on this and we'll schedule another meeting or handle the other items differently? Or do we want to cut this to a close at this moment? So make it
Right.
I think, a kind of a interactive, live, real time agenda that is agile, right?
Right.
So I do think that, so the agenda, I know I've spent a lot of time on as a tip, but I think it's probably your best tool in the toolkit. The second thing is before the meeting, if you have a history with people and you realize some people come to the meetings and they're kind of bystanders, they don't really actively engage, think about doing some pre work with them. Just say, hey, um, I know that you and I have talked about XYZ before on Tuesday when we have this meeting. I'd love for you to share with the group your thoughts. So anything that you can entice people so that they're ready when they go in the meeting to actually participate. I
Right.
think that it's the first time you've ever met with people. You don't know who's going to engage, who's not, but many of you meet with the same people with some frequency. Figure out how can I help break down the wall. I had somebody in one of my prior jobs who I just knew he was going to be talking all the time in meetings. And it kind of took the air out of the room because the focus was always on him. I learned to get it with him ahead of time to hear his thoughts and say, hey, I love all of your ideas. If you're okay, I'm going to summarize where your position is and invite other
Mhm.
people to react to it. So I would
Right.
try to make sure that I could harness that over communicating to get other people engaged. I guess my next idea is I use icebreakers. I believe in icebreakers. Some of our listeners are rolling their eyes saying, oh, please don't make me do two truths and a lie again. Please don't make me do an icebreaker again. The reason I value them so much is that I think it gets people opening up and talking a little bit. And once the
Yeah.
ice has been broken and somebody has uttered words, they're more likely to utter words later.
Right.
Plus, I think you can help build relationships and trust among the team when people get to know each other at a deeper level. So, one
Right.
of my kids, my daughter, works for a large organization, and in their team meetings, whoever's running the meeting comes with an icebreaker. She always said, "Oh, mom, I'm going to have to do an icebreaker today." She hates them, and I love them. So, um, I guess my next tip is that be sure and thank people who participate in your meeting. So when someone adds an idea, whether you agree with it or not, say, thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for jumping in
Um,
first. Showing
right.
appreciation for people speaking up, engaging and talking gets other people to do it too. So
Right.
having that mindset of gratitude when people talk, you can be sickeningly, thank you, thank you, thank you. No, be deliberate, intentional,
Right.
but be respectful and thankful when people talk.
Yeah. I love that advice, by the
Oh,
way. I think
good.
that's really important.
It kind of sets the tone for that
Yeah.
invites more people. So I love it. And then my last thought is use polling, voting, small group brainstorming, partnering up, just as if you were training JoDee or doing a presentation, just even in a
Mhm.
meeting, getting people, instead of the focus being on you as the meeting leader, get it on each other. Get somebody who maybe doesn't talk much in the group. They're more likely to talk to that person next to them. So say, we're going to partner up. We're going to we're going to come up with ideas, but I know it's always easier to do it in a small group forum first. So I think that can help keep the energy high.
Love it.
JoDee, how about you? Anything else that you think that I've missed?
I think you hit all the key areas. One, I just really want to emphasize that I think is so important is to invite others to um, participate, like before the meetings, even
Mhm.
to think. I think a lot of times in meetings, if we're leading the meeting, that we think we need to do all the talking or the
Mm.
presentation. So have different areas where someone, okay, on this topic, I want Susan to lead this section, or I want John to lead this section. And don't it can be like a presentation. It's boring. Can be boring just to hear
Mhm.
one person talk on and on. So invite other people to share topics.
I love that. Share the leadership of the meeting with others can be very
Yeah.
empowering and good development. So, yeah,
Yeah.
good point. A good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
JoDee, it's in the news time. A March 19th, 2026 article by Kathy Busowitz on the AP News hit our radar. It is entitled Microshifting Puts a New Spin on 9 to 5 Schedules. The term microshifting refers to a flexible work style where employees break their workday into short, non continuous bursts of blocks, for example, 40 to 90 minutes, which could be between early morning and bedtime rather than devoting a concentrated 8, 9, or 10-hour shift. The purpose is so the employee can focus on being productive for focus times that fit around their personal commitments, like childcare, elder care, pet care, exercise, side gigs, running to the grocery. In Busowitz's article, she says a micro shifter's performance is judged by their output with less emphasis on the number of hours logged in. Some of the advantages include giving the brain breaks to recharge, enabling you to put time and energy into all aspects of your life and not just the workday. So we've got better work life balance. Enables more creativity when the brain has time and space for ideas to bubble up. Gives employees the flexibility they crave and the autonomy that can increase engagement. And it enables staff to have better outside of work lives and relationships as they can flex as personal needs and opportunities arise.
I love those ideas. And I'll tell you, I have not, I would say over the course of my career, I've not been one to take many breaks.
Mhm.
And 14 years ago, we got a dog, and I was working from home with the dog and started taking the dog on walks throughout the day, to get them out and get them some exercise. And I couldn't believe the difference it made in my work.
Mm.
And I never would have believed it if I
Mhm.
had actually kind of been forced to
Sure.
take the dog out, right? And so I really am a big believer in this.
You'd come
Um,
back with better thoughts. You'd come back with ideas. That's
yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah,
Great
yeah. Just
example.
I mean, for me, it was getting outside in nature and in the sun and sometimes the freezing cold. And I just would always come back with a different idea or a different thought or a renewed energy or whatever it might be. So,
Beautiful. Well, there are downsides that this article does point out. First of all, professional relationships can suffer as you aren't as available when others are. If you're micro
mhm,
shifting in bursts from when you wake
yeah,
up till you go to bed, you may not be there when there's a critical problem to be resolved or online when somebody wanted to vet some ideas with you. It is
right,
harder to offer micro shifting to the front line, lower level people who need to be present at specific times, right? The production line needs to be filled, customer service roles need to be occupied.
right,
So, whereas higher level people are probably micro shifting now when they need to, right? Without
right,
policies around it, which can really build a class system, it can build resentment.
right.
And then even the people that are actively microshifting today, they may sometimes feel like they're always working because they feel they need to keep putting in bursts to offset any non employer time that they leaned into that day. JoDee, I see the pros and the cons. Personally, looking back to when I worked for an employer, I enjoyed having a fairly regular start and stop time so I could walk away at the end of the day.
Mhm, right,
However, now as a consultant working for myself, I certainly microshift. But
right.
if I still worked for a company, I'm not sure if I would feel guilty when I microshifted to go to an exercise class or to go get my nails done or something. If I
Right.
microshifted, since some days could end up employer work heavy and others employer work light. My guess is even though you yourself is not probably haven't microshifted a lot, the staff that you have at Purple Lake, it looks from the outside in that they're microshifting
Oh, yes, 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 all
because you
the
don't
time.
care what time people deliver product or or work with
Right,
their clients.
right, right. I remember when I first started working, and a lot of guys I worked with would get their hair cut in the middle of the day. And
Mm.
I would think, "What in the world? Why would they get their haircut in the middle of a workday?" I just thought that was crazy. And I have to admit, today I'm getting my hair cut in the day. Like, I've been doing that now for like 10 years. And
Yes.
it just, but every time I do it, I think about those early years when I was appalled that people would
Mhm.
take a break in the middle of the day,
And I bet they were executives doing it. So there's that
Yes.
resentment, right?
Yes.
Yeah, of course,
Yes.
men get their hair cut in 10 minutes. So, yeah.
Right. Right.
We
Right.
women take a lot longer.
That's
Oh,
right.
well, that's fun. If you're SHRM certified, you can get credit for listening to this episode. To get the code, go to getjoypowered.com/SHRM and fill out a short evaluation. When you finish the evaluation, you'll get the code and a link to a proof of participation certificate. The code will expire on June 1st, 2027. Again, that's getjoypowered.com/SHRM to get the code, and it's going to expire on June 1, 2027. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your dedication to the HR profession.
And as always, make it a joy powered day.
Thank you. If you like the show, please tell a few friends about us and let us know what you thought by leaving us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now. Become a Joy Powered member to get extras like early access to episodes, video versions of the episodes, bonus episodes, and even more. Learn more at patreon.com/joypowered. You spell Patreon, Patreon. So it's patreon.com/joypowered. You can find more information on our podcast, books, blogs, and more at getjoypowered.com. We're at JoyPowered on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And you can email us via joypowered@gmail.com. Make it a joy-powered day.